Welcome to the happiest podcast in the world.
This is Hughens. This is Hughens, and I'm Son, and this is the happiest podcast in the world.
Do you want to start again?
Why?
I don't know.
I think we should start as soon as possible. I think that's the message.
Yes. So welcome to the happiest podcast in the world. I'm Hughens.
And I'm Son. Well, I pointed to you, but I'm actually the Son. Anyway, I was thinking about that happiest podcast in the world thing. And I was thinking what we were talking about earlier with people selling products and saying you are without something, you're missing something without our product. And I wanted to say that we're not trying to say here that you can get happiness from us and you can't be happy without. If you're happy without the podcast, then by all means, you better be doing that and not be here. But whether or not you are here, we are having the best party of our lives.
That's right.
All day, every day, all night long. This is the happiest podcast in the world.
And we're happy to share our happy with you.
Yes.
That's what he's saying.
Yes.
But, hopefully a little of our happiness will rub off on you. And
yes.
You can rub some of your happiness on somebody else. But be careful with that because I think there might be laws in certain states.
Well, this is true bliss. So here we are. We're happy and we're here.
I just keep thinking of that old 70s Partridge Family song. Get happy. It's not exactly the way the tune goes, but
be careful how much you disclose on here because I've been told the podcast space is very litigious with their. Is that the right way to use that word?
Sure.
With their copyright laws. We just watched a movie last night. The character hummed to the tune to a song, a Law and Order song, and they had to credit it.
Yeah. So I'll be careful. I'm sure I'll just, I just referenced it. Get happy.
I'm
Hughens.
You're Hughens. I'm Hughens, and I'm happy.
So I guess my first question is why are we here?
We've woken up at the exact same time today, and now we have this day together. We don't know what it'll be 2 seconds from now. We don't know what it'll be tomorrow. But right now we're here. So, we have very shared interests, and I think that's a huge reason why we are at this desk right now.
Exactly. So, I think that's part of what we should talk about. Yes, it is happy. We share the interest of happiness, but film is really the reason that we are here doing this podcast.
Film makes us happy. Pursuing filmmaking is what makes us happy.
Pursuing our passion, which is filmmaking.
Yes, the pursuit of passion at every waking moment is what makes us happy. So I'd say that this is in line with pursuing that passion.
Yes. And we want to, document our journey together. So we are starting a journey together into filmmaking, pursuing our passion of filmmaking.
More of an official start. The journey has been going on for a long time.
No doubt.
And this is the really official documentation of really recognizing the journey.
Right.
And that we're actually going to be a father and son duo that is... we've always been a father and son duo, but, to actually...
Most of the time.
Put the ampersand in there that has never really been done before. And I can't think of many father and son duos in cinema history specifically, but I think that the thing that really allows this to happen is our fortunate, close relationship. And I think that's also a huge reason why we should have the podcast. I don't know many other podcasters that or any people in any careers that have created such a close relationship with their children enough to have them involved in their career.
Right.
People talk highly of their children, but I've never seen them actually.
So let's just talk a little bit more about that, how this came to be, because you kind of were inspired by some things that I had done in my past, which I can just go ahead and tell you about. I wrote and directed an independent feature film back in '89. All right, and pursued filmmaking for a while. Life led me on a journey. I pursued a career in music for a while, and then decided to pursue a career in family, and that's where you came in.
Yes.
Along the way, I still had my passion, but was more of, doing things close to home. Not really in filmmaking, but we made a video. I guess you had seen me messing around with video cameras and Super 8 film cameras and stuff, and you wanted to make a video, so we made a little video in the backyard, and one thing led to another. You got into Lego. You got into making videos around Lego products, and I joined in and helped because I enjoy making videos. I had a job marketing for an independent school, and I made videos there. So all along you saw this, and I guess you kind of took off on your own. You started editing things on your own. Moving into middle and high school, you kind of started playing around with different, other than Lego, different types of videos that you made, and went on to high school and got into some video making classes. And as it had, you graduated high school and got a job, an internship in Atlanta, Georgia, with Turner Broadcast,
Which is now Warner Media.
Specifically
Adult Swim.
Adult Swim. And you were off and running, and then decided that you wanted to move to Atlanta. And let's just go ahead and say we are here in Atlanta now.
We are here in Atlanta.
We together. I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's where Jackson grew up.
Grew up where most of the videos were made.
Exactly.
Shot, edited, thought up.
Right. And so there I was, mid-career, midlife, and going down that path, and you inspired me. I was like, look at my kid going off and getting it done. And so the passion kind of flamed in my heart again, and I was like, I'm not going to let him outdo me. I'm going to have to get down there and do something. So I had friends here in Atlanta and decided that I was going to quit my very nice job that I had in the middle of a pandemic and just move to another state and start pursuing it. And you decided to move in with me, and we said, let's make a podcast about this thing. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of different. So hopefully people will find that interesting, and we'll share some knowledge as I reacquaint myself with filmmaking, and you launch into your career of filmmaking, and hopefully I can ride your coattails.
Here they are.
There you go.
You can
Is
have
there enough
them
room on there for
right
me?
now.
All right.
We both have coattails today.
We do.
And I don't really think that it will ever be you riding my coattails or me riding your coattails, because I think a very fortunate thing that we have come across is that we both have a perpetual inspiration going, where you have inspired me from the very beginning and are continuing to inspire me. And I mean, I trust that you're telling the truth and you're saying that I've inspired you.
No doubt.
So it's perpetual now.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of unfair to the competition, if there is any competition, because when I get low, you can pump me up, and then when you get low, I pump you up.
Right. And
It's good to have a friend like that.
well, you've first of all, you were the one who put me on to positivity. I would say, well, you've given me a lot of the sources that I still am coming back to. Les
Right.
Brown, you won't hear enough about him at us.
That's true.
And now that I can remind you, hey, well, go back and read this Les Brown page, even though you've already read it. But that's
Yeah.
the best part about it.
No, that's awesome. I want you to bust me if I ever, stray off the path. It's good. It's good to have somebody to keep you in line. Go, hey man, you said you were going to do it, and I do it.
And we also have, I trust you when you say that you're inspired by me. We have
It's true.
we
No,
have
I
a
wouldn't
kind
mind.
of trust that is I don't know that I've ever had between anybody else. So and the thing is, you've had my whole lifetime, my entire lifetime to build. And I haven't known you your entire lifetime, but in the entire time that I've known you in my life, it has been, the trust has been building and building and building.
It's important.
This is the most trustworthy podcast between the two hosts.
True.
I can't tell you what tactics we will use, but
trust me.
When Joe Rogan has another guy on there, I don't even know if I can trust Joe Rogan to begin with. So where's the trust is between us is insane.
So that's good. No, that's great.
And important. And when we get into some of the tales of what you have done with your feature film, we'll learn that is quite a good skill to have on your side, to trust the people who you're heavily involved with on your project.
No doubt. So you look at some other close teams, like we just watched an interview with the Coen brothers the other night. And so, as brothers, they probably have some good bonds and trust between them. So they know that on the set, they've got each other's back. And that's really good because, it can be a cutthroat business, no doubt. And you get on a set and you don't know what people's ulterior motives are.
Yes.
And then, hopefully with you and I, we stay open and honest and trustworthy and
I won't be trying to scam you out of anything, or you'll probably, if I try to spend all the budget on Twinkies or something, you'll catch me before, I'll confess to it and get you your money back. I won't just leave you.
Or give me a Twinkie or two,
And the other thing is keeping each other in check, where we won't. I think the Coen brothers at least have this. I don't know. Maybe at this point they are both very aware of their style, but. You have more of a balance of checks and balances, I guess, that you can be like, you can call me out on a creative decision, and I can call you out on a creative decision.
Right, without getting so offended that you just fire me or run away.
And I can value your opinion more. I know who it's coming from. So criticism, we're both good with that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about why a podcast. I know for me, part of the thing that you and I share is a love for story.
Yes.
And as I dive back into filmmaking and you start on your journey, that we want to hone our craft as much as possible to be the best storytellers with the projects that we want to build. And so my thought was, if we do a podcast and, the main goal was to talk about story, understand story, share story with people, educate people on story. Well, to educate somebody, you have to know it yourself. And, I'll be the first to admit that I don't have it all down. I know I love good story. I know a good story when I hear it. And I feel like I've written a couple of good stories, but I want to be able to have more of a command. So my thought was, let's just delve into story. And, maybe 100 podcasts in, we might know a few things to help us out in making a new story.
I think the pursuit of story is just as commendable as knowing story very well.
Well, sure.
So I think that you have raised me telling me story, and but you really mean it. And a lot of people, they say that a lot, but they don't follow through with the actions required. And
well, because it's hard. I think it's really difficult to tell a good story.
Yes.
It's super easy, and especially nowadays, and we talk about this all the time, how easy it is to get a camera that looks like Hollywood, whether it's straight out of the box or you're using a LUT or whatever. And so many people are interested in that look and that look and the look. Special effects, CGI, green screen. I mean, it's just so easy to build worlds that are, beyond fantasy in a green room. And, but it's hard to tell a great story that inspires people, that hooks you in, that makes you love the protagonist. And, so I think people have forgotten about it. It's kind of a lost art.
Well, especially in filmmaking.
Especially in filmmaking. And I think, people don't read as much anymore. There's so much social media, so much time online, and, just look it up on, the search engine and figure it out that way instead of getting in there and reading all the classics and understanding how these authors,
Right.
Weave a story and what the different aspects are. And that's what we're going to get into on this podcast, or all those things.
Yeah, and even just comparing it to searching things up, and I probably, before I actually fell in love with books and reading, I would have said, oh well, it's more efficient. You can streamline your access works quicker and easier online, and you don't need all of this information, and it's all stored in one place. But the thing is, there is a tradition with it's almost like we have evolved with books, like humans, and reading is a good human experience, and feels like you get more in touch with life. And I have never felt anything like that browsing the web. The web has been a tool; it's helped me, but I've never used a tool or a hammer and been like, oh my goodness, this is something extraordinary. This is something next level. And books, actually reading books.
There's something different for me anyway. I know holding a book in my hand, the pages, the print, and just losing yourself in a story, in these words, your mind deciphering words that you haven't heard before. I know you just purchased a dictionary to go alongside your books, so you can look words up that you don't know right off the top of your head, and help to expand your vocabulary. But
let me say, there's a lot more temptations for filmmakers if you have a multifaceted filmmaking passion. And I know that there's a lot of people who get into filmmaking, and I love this love in filmmaking, that there's a love for so many of the elements.
Right.
And so many people, you'll ask them, I don't think there's many people in one department that have always stayed in that one department. And often people get into the film industry and end up in a totally different department than they thought they would be in. And I think that's really great. But if you're wanting to be a writer and director, that combo is two very different. Writing and directing are two very different skill sets, as far as I'm concerned right now. If I learn different, I will update it on podcast 100 when we totally figure out story. But there's a lot of temptations, and I'll tell you, the temptations are the thinking about the style and the beautiful shots, but to think about those before you've realized your story and before you've realized the writing. And that's the thing that you can get really carried away with. And a novelist, somebody who's just sitting down to write a novel, just sitting down, I made it sound like it's such a simple thing. It's not, and that's what I'm really figuring out. But when you sit down to write a novel or stand up, however you do it, it is a little bit more straightforward. You're probably not going to be thinking too much about the cover or anything outside of what's in the pages. Where if your mind is on writing and directing, then you're going to be thinking about camera stuff is in your head, camera angles are in your head, lighting is in your head, editing may be in your head.
Well, and it's all important, I think.
But to figure out how to switch the channels on and off at the right times, or to use them all, synchronizing. Maybe it would be good if you're going to write your films to have editing in mind. But with what I've had experience in, since I am not super honed in on story and writing, is that you can think too much about an editing technique, and then you end up writing something way more with editing in mind, or way more with doing some certain filmmaking technique in mind than a story technique.
Well, if we use an analogy, which is a literary device, story is the foundation. And if you start building, a house on top of a weak foundation, it's going to fall over before you get the roof on it. So, there's the window dressings, there's the paint, there's the interior design. There's so many different aspects, like you're saying, in a film, in a movie. But in order to get the best product at the end, you got to start with a strong foundation. You can't shoot a film and then go back and edit the script, the screenplay, the story. It's just not going to work. Now, shots, sure, if you have a bad shot, you can use some editing in a different angle or something to cover it up, but you're not gonna gloss over a bad story.
And if you love all of these aspects, which a lot of people do, I love all these aspects, so many different aspects within filmmaking. You can still have a incredibly fun experience making it, even
Sure.
if the story was bad. So that's also another thing. You've got to be super self-aware, because you can go through the entire process and say, well, how could it be a bad film? We had so much fun.
That's right.
We did everything right.
It's got the latest, greatest camera.
Yes.
You have all the lights in the world, the best actors, the most awesome locations, the best editor, the best score, and all that. And it's wonderful, and it's fun, and it's beautiful. But this is just for me, and I think for you, I speak for you as well. We just want, if we're going to make a film, we want the strongest story possible. And so that's what this journey is about, for us to learn as much about story as we can.
Yeah, we're not claiming that the key to it isn't cinema. We're not saying some sort of definition like it isn't a movie, it isn't cinema if you don't prioritize story. You might make the best movie of all time and not prioritize story.
Sure.
But for us, the way that we want to approach it, and if this changes, this is why we have the podcast, so we can document, okay, between episode 1 and 2, the first episode we were talking about the story, and then the second episode, now we're saying that story is terrible.
Yeah, it's all about the aspect ratio of the camera. That's it.
But likely, you've been preaching story all my life, so I don't think it's going to change by the next episode. I hope it doesn't, unless that really appeals to me. I think that'll make a better movie. But we want to make movies that tell incredible stories, and really, I think the way that you've raised me is that storytelling is maybe the main thing in our genetics, or that is wanting to be done. At least for me, if cinema wasn't a thing, I would like to think that we would be doing whatever the other thing is, playwriting, or I don't know.
Well, true. We've both written children's books, haven't we?
Yes, and that was very early on in my process.
Right. I have been in a band. I've written songs, and a lot of my songs have a story to it. The band may have, had a theme, a story to it. So story has been a major part for me in many of my endeavors. I do enjoy the building, the production part, whether it is a band, a book, building a house, training somebody, whatever it is. It's that seed of an idea through to completion. But once again, for me, if it's not a great story, I want to try to make the best story every time I make a film.
And I would like to. Well, my favorite films have great stories. There's not a film that is a favorite of mine that is bereft of story. So I just want more with story, and that's all. I think story is the thing that is, and you will read this in any storybooks. It's talked about in Story by Robert McKee. It's talked about in Save the Cat, which is a very smaller book and probably more accessible. It's like watered down McKee. It's way more understandable.
I'm sure that author appreciates that.
Well, I think it's still great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Distilled.
Yeah.
Which you can have distilled water, so watered down, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So it's called Save the Cat. I would still recommend it. Robert McKee is more scholarly, and he's probably the guy wearing the suit.
Right.
So you'll probably see that in these books that they prove that story has it goes back to way far back. We have like a primal connection with it, and I think that's a big thing too. Is that story is something else. It has this connection that I've had since falling in love with books that I don't get with other forms of entertainment, that I don't get from just mindlessly scrolling through YouTube or whatever, or any sort of video content that isn't carefully crafted.
Right.
Like it does tap into being human. It helps us. It helps us live. It's, people open themselves up to a movie screen. I don't need to tell you how crazy, if you just think about how weird the idea of going in and sitting down in a movie theater and that whole experience and what is actually happening and how people come out crying. I worked at a movie theater once. I think you've also worked at a movie theater.
Yeah.
And I have witnessed multiple people coming out of the theater crying. They went in happy. They bought tickets. They went in there knowingly. They wanted this experience. It is not, I don't view story as an escape. I don't view it as entertainment. This is good storytelling. There can be TV shows that are entertainment, and usually those to me are, or there can be movies that are entertainment, and usually those to me are the ones that are lacking story. I think if it has a good story, you can't help your human heart and mind and soul to connect with it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's entertainment, but it's just there's a deeper connection, a longer lasting impression.
And books, I think, are almost a step. This could be different for certain people. For me, right now, I feel like books go just a little bit deeper than certain films.
We should talk about that, because I know that we had said we have a list here of ideas for the podcast, and I'm sure we're going to go over books to movies.
Yes.
That's something we've talked about. What's your favorite book to movie combination, where the book is just as good as the movie? And then we can talk about ones where it failed. Mm-hmm. We talked the other day about, movies to books. That's a rarity. But, what the difference is between a book and a movie, and why, of course, one is visual and oral and, is shorter. A movie is much shorter than a book. I mean, it's, if you're reading a good-sized book, it's going to take you, days to read it, not just sitting for 2 hours, unless you're a speed reader.
But I've even heard from speed readers. I've watched videos about speed readers, and I know, like, one of the guys with the biggest records, he says that when he reads for enjoyment, he doesn't do his speed reading methods. So even people who can read fast, I think, still would spend a longer amount of time. They're not just cramming it all
right
in their head.
Yeah. So that's, it's worth discussing. What's the difference? And so that makes me think about our book list. So like we said, we're trying to figure out story, trying to educate ourselves to be the best storytellers that we can be. And one of the ideas, and, some of our heroes have suggested this, is to make sure that you're well read. And this is another thing that I've preached all my life to Jackson is read. And it took you a while to get on.
Because I didn't see the connection to what I wanted to do.
Right.
I think that was the biggest turning point.
It is big. Because, it's tough. Somebody can sit there and preach to you, and I don't know that I preached, but I sure suggested it strongly many times. And then, tried to be a role model and show you and read on my own. But you've now, the bug's bitten you. You know that you want to do it for, a reason to become better and educate yourself. So Jackson and I decided to put together a list. So we've got a list of at least 50 books. You'll see some of them on the shelf behind me.
Do you want to move out of the way? So
Which way? This way.
Yeah. See, there's even more going all the way down.
Yeah.
We've got, 4 sections of this bookshelf, totally maxed out,
Yeah.
filled up.
So we've got a list that we started of 50 books, and we started in earnest about, a week or so ago?
I would
2 weeks?
This is that we've completed, I think, the first week in of both reading the same books.
Right.
Because a week ago, we both read Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Then,
over the weekend.
Over the weekend.
You one day, me the next. Or was
Yeah.
it, no, it was
no,
both,
it was
in
both
the same
in the
day?
same day,
Yeah.
last Saturday.
So great book. Let's just go ahead and endorse
Yes.
that one.
And I will be
Can read
happy
it
to
in a
come
day.
back and talk more. Yes, it could be read in a day. It could be read in a morning or an afternoon. It could be read in half of a day, I'm telling you. Because there's beautiful pictures in there. So read that, please. And that is one of the books that I've had one of the most, it's one of those experiences where you're like, okay, I see the hubbub about reading, and I understand all of my life when somebody has said why you should pick up a book, or
What's
something.
the hubbub, bub?
Well, because until you've had that experience, you're like, oh, this person is saying what's so magical and everything, and you can't understand until it has
Right.
happened.
And different books speak to different people. So
Yes, so it might not be Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but it was for me. So I'm just trying to sport the colors that are on the cover of the book because I love
I
it so
did
much.
not know that. I didn't know that's what was the
Blue and yellow.
wardrobe
And
choices.
so we read that on Saturday, and then right after that we started. I started 1984 by George Orwell, and you.
I started Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So there.
And also we have incorporated reading poetry by Robert Frost. One Robert Frost poem every day.
Yep.
And we're both reading the same poem every day, and often it's ended up where I read it, you read it, on paper, and then one of us will
Read it
out loud so we can both hear it at the same time.
Right.
I like that process a lot. And if you're gonna read poetry, especially like Robert Frost or any older poetry, I think that is a great way to get somebody else involved. I know people do book clubs or things, but I think with novels, it's kind of harder to get a whole group of people completely so interested. And I think finding a book for you to read needs to be very personal. So I don't know that it works great with big novels. Like if you had a whole friend group read War and Peace, I don't know how many times that has actually been able to be lined up successfully. Like a team of people that are all reading at the same time. I don't know. But poetry, I think, is actually, I'm realizing with our process, I think it's actually better to, at least older poetry, to be able to understand it well, because it's kind of up for more of an interpretation
True.
with each person. So that's cool to read with somebody else.
Yeah.
So we got poetry every day, and then now we've been reading a little something else too at the beginning or somewhere in our day. I've been reading Les Brown, Live Your Dreams, and I had started that book before I had really gotten into this kick of reading every single day and really loving reading. I don't think I was fully in love with reading. I was forming the love when I first started reading that, but now I'm halfway through and I'm reading a little bit every day. But that's a book, a book like that you don't have to
Read
push
it in
through
chunks.
like a story.
Yeah.
And then also you gave me you can't afford the luxury of a negative thought.
Right.
So I've been reading a little bit of that every day. And then my main reading chunk is the fiction that we're doing. And now we've swapped.
Yep.
So we've just finished yesterday our books. So now I'm reading Wuthering Heights.
Yep. And I'm on 1984. So then we'll be able to discuss as we go along, which will be fun.
I'm excited for that. I've only gotten the first page in, so there's not much. You haven't started 1984
No,
yet, right?
I haven't started yet.
So
Because we're doing
that'll
this
be
podcast.
that will be the first thing we'll be doing once we get off of get out of these seats.
Yes.
So anyway, I got the love of. I just wanted to say, if it's cool, to talk about the love of reading, and also I was just thinking, you have Preach It to Me, and we are kind of an exception of. I don't know anybody else that has there's like a father and son that have a relationship like us. And even with that, it still took a while for you to really convey reading to me.
Right.
And so I just don't think I'm not sure that it can be super forced. I think a human has to discover reading through what they're interested in. I don't think you can discover reading. Well, if you have an interest in reading off the bat, then I guess that gets you there. But I almost think that, like, for a lot of people, possibly, you have to have an interest in something. Whatever your interest is has to then be tied into reading.
Well, or you find the right book, or you find the right mentor in a teacher. I mean, because that's where most people. I mean, your mother and I read to you
Yes.
as a child, and it was. I mean, I think we at least 3 books a night. And me knowing that that's what I wanted to do was for you to hear these stories and hear words and be inspired to read. But when you get into school, sometimes there can be a negative effect if you don't have the right teacher, or they try to get you to read something that's not all that great. It can be tough. It can turn you off.
Well, when I recall reading in high school, I guess when I recall most things in high school, it makes me feel this way. But when I recall reading in high school, especially now, to compare it to how I feel about it now, it's weird. It feels grimy and dirty and gross and disgusting. Like,
what were you reading, man?
no, I think we read things like Crime and
Reading
Punishment.
girly magazines and
No,
locker room or something.
we're reading we're reading Crime and Punishment and
See,
Shakespeare, things that are good, but
they're excellent.
it was the approach to it that soured.
Could be the approach. You could have been just a little too young for that.
Well, I don't think the interests connected yet.
Right.
And also maybe the self-confidence too. Maybe if I would have thought, hey, I can really tackle story, I think I had a vision of myself. I knew I had liked story. I had written that children's book.
Right.
How old was I when I had done that?
Oh man, I mean, you were like 5 or 6.
So I think I've had the inkling, correct? Is that the correct word?
Yes.
To make stories,
Or no, the inclination.
inclination
Yeah.
to make stories for a long time. But I think in high school, in that period, I think I knew that I wanted to make feature films and write them. But I think at that period I thought, oh, well, I'm just in my silly video phase, and right now I'm making silly videos, and then one
the
day
same reason most people just go for the visual instead of the story is that's what you were into. So it did. It took just a little more maturity on your part, and then finding out, hey, this is what I want to do. So how can I get my goals accomplished? And then you had some mentors. I mean, you started researching by looking at films, and you came across Stanley Kubrick.
Yes.
And you've read about Stanley Kubrick. You went to London, and I'm
I
sure
read his stuff in his archives.
Yeah, and
took
you,
notes.
And you took notes. Excellent. Unlike you in high school, not taking notes, which me either. I was a terrible note taker. But nonetheless, you found out that Stanley loved books and read a lot of books, and so you're like,
his wife described him in an interview as a voracious reader. I think she even said that he read so much that it prevented him from getting a lot of sleep, and that possibly the prevention of sleep is what killed him. So,
death by book reading is great. It's a great way to go. But so that inspiration, led you to go, okay, let me check this out a little bit. My dad was telling me about it.
yes. So, but it's still there. So your efforts weren't in vain.
No, definitely
Correct.
not.
So, and people might think that somebody in not the right mind space could parent their kid and for all these years and be like, I don't know what I've done. I've told him read, and he's gotten to this point. And
so yeah, and that's that I would give here. I'll give a parenting tip now because I have been a parent.
And I would say you're qualified since I'm here and I'm not like flipping you off and saying screw you or whatever. I don't. If somebody failed as a parent, I don't think that their kid would be smiling and be willing to be on a podcast
with their father. Yeah, it's going to kill your social relevance.
So, parenting tip. I don't want to cancel that out.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm the perfect parent by any means, but I did work at a school for almost 15 years. I got to witness a lot of parenting going on. I was privy to many bad decisions and could see it play out in the parking lot. And so, being observant, and also I took some courses on positive parenting and different things. And my advice would be, if there's something that you want to instill in your child, with love for reading, love for music, love for, whatever it might be, is just to model that and keep on it. Don't preach, but just, extol the virtues of why it is good, why it is something that would benefit them. And at some point in time, they will come around and they will be enlightened and do it. And that's what's happened with you. So, that's my parenting tip.
The interests connected. It was, like you said, it was Kubrick. I saw this guy. I thought, and this is not, I'm not going to say, certainly not claiming to be the first aspiring filmmaker to say, Kubrick is great. I love Kubrick.
Right.
A lot of people do that. And I've been reminded that time and time again, as much as I talk about Kubrick. Yeah, everybody has a Kubrick phase, etc. Okay. But the thing is, I'm almost, the reason I really hold on to it is because I kind of feel like that a lot of people kind of are focused on the directing side of things.
Right.
And people have a Kubrick direction phase. And I've seen a lot of people emulate the Kubrick style in terms of cinematography. But I think the real reason that Kubrick can't really be emulated is because he read so much and he understood great stories, and he clearly had a certain taste of great story. And that's why you can't really make, you can make another Kubrick film, but you would have to pay attention to both his style and more mainly his eye for story. And that's what I kind of want to take away from Kubrick. I don't care if I have the cool shots. I don't care about his methods of doing 100 takes. Those aren't the things that stick out to me. The thing that sticks out to me is his wife saying that he probably died from being a voracious reader.
Yeah.
That is a pretty big detail, and I haven't heard that talked about by any other person who's talking about Kubrick. And that's my biggest takeaway from him right now. He has recommended this, I believe, in an interview. He's on record somewhere saying that E.M. Forster's Aspects of the Novel is a book that he really likes. And that book is talking about novels, stories, and analyzing them from the greats. We actually have a good bit of books on our to-read list that are recommended in Aspects of the Novel, but it's kind of like one of these screenwriting books, but more in terms of analyzing story for the great works of literature in novel form.
Exactly.
And also, I love in E.M. Forster's Aspects of the Novel, which I read that because of his recommendation, and now that's led me into reading more books because it talks about all these legendary classics, and I missed like half the book because it's like, well, when this guy uses this technique, and it's like, well, I don't know. I was able to get some of it because he referenced Dickens, and I've read Oliver Twist, so I was like, okay, I get it when he's saying that this is Dickens' style because I have a little bit of reference. So
Right.
So that's also another thing. Books will just exponentially increase and increase. So if you were to start reading right now and you're not really a big reader, if you think of yourself as not a big reader, and you're like, well, I've just read one book over the year, that one book, keep on it, because if you only read one book over the year, that book could then lead you to 2 books the next year, and then the year after that could be 1,000.
Exactly.
You don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, because if you do a little research, you'll know that maybe that author was inspired by somebody before them.
Right.
So then you could go back and read that, or maybe they inspired somebody after them, and you could go forward and read those. So that's a great idea.
So I'll sum up my point, because I just did a thing that is done long form podcasting, where you start to bring into something and then you dive into something. I'll finish my point on E.M. Forster's Aspects of the Novel. A thing that I loved in that, talking about primalness, was he talks about the group of cavemen sitting around telling stories, and the storyteller among the cavemen, and he's got to tell a great story, or else, for one, it motivates the whole crew to do better the next day. So at the end of the day, it motivates them to go out and hunt
harder.
more, or love each other more, or whatever, or mate more. Who knows? Well, it's important back then. You got to get the numbers up, so now there's enough people to produce cameras and everything.
Yeah.
But it's a little more numbers game than, but he talks about the cavemen sitting around the fire, and I think he says, big jaws agaped, in shock of great stories.
Right.
And if not, then they are killing the storyteller, whacking him over the head with a bone, 2001: A Space Odyssey style.
Exactly. So nowadays you can make a bad story and just, maybe not be able to make another film, and that's the worst of it.
Or if you're
Back
like Wes
then,
Anderson, you've got a
club.
style, then you can continue. You can still continue and work with great people.
Yes.
Like, yeah, back then,
You're clubbed over the head.
yes, you got clubbed. That was the scary thing.
Yeah. Well, years ago, and there's the joke people on stage telling jokes or whatever, and if they don't do well, they're people throw tomatoes at them, and that's
Tomato is much more
uncomfortable.
forgiving.
Right. Or they're jerked off stage and thrown out the back door, but clubbed over the head. Sorry, bad story, buddy. No, wait, hang on, let me change the ending.
You've got to know it before you go to the fire.
Yeah,
You
don't-
can't get everybody's attention up at the fire
Yeah.
until you have got that ending.
That's it. That's what's happening. I think in filmmaking, it's like,
Yeah,
hey,
it's
hey,
like-
hey, I gotta,
Yes.
I gotta film. Let me come and make it. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, okay. Here's your money. Let's make it. All right.
It's almost like all the great camera angles and everything
Yeah.
is them putting the sticks in the fire. They're like, hey, come gather around my fire. Look, I'm making it real big, and
Yeah.
it's a real nice fire.
Look at me.
All right, yeah, look at me dancing around the
Got my
fire.
best loincloth on.
Yes.
Check me out.
Yeah, a bright red loincloth.
They say,
Velvet.
ugh, go for it. You're like, all right. Once upon a time,
You don't want to be improving as the
uh,
campfire storyteller.
Ned went to.
Yeah, your realistic Tarantino dialogue is not going to get you too far.
Right.
There. Cheese Royale with cheese. That's what they call hamburgers in France.
That's right.
Then what?
Then what?
Ugh.
Yeah, there he goes.
He's out. So I love thinking about that, and I'd like to think that is, our ancestors way back in time. That's the Hughens were around the campfire, and I'd like to think that they didn't get clubbed because we're here, unless
Yeah.
they got clubbed and crawled out of it
Right.
and still managed
But
to.
if you crawled out of it, then you learned a lesson. So
Yes.
that's what we're doing. That's why we're here on this podcast, is to learn lessons. It's kind of
And get
selfish.
clubbed.
Yeah. So club us if you'd like, if we don't tell a good story eventually. But give us to at least episode 100.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing about the podcast is we don't have to have our story. This is, like I said, this is more about the pursuit of story. We don't have to see. We're doing this now. We're not going and investing everything we have and all of our equipment to go put this on the big screen.
Right.
We're not saying, "Hey, look at us. We're around the fire. Look, we got something to tell you." We're waiting for that moment till we can really deliver the most impactful punch.
So we're going on the journey, and you're going with us. And that's kind of part of our philosophy, isn't it? The journey. It's all about the journey.
Yes.
It's not the destination.
And I think that's important philosophy to get to the destination. Like, I don't think, if you really, like, I think that is an important part of, well, not the destination, but being a good storyteller, being a good writer, and if you really, I mean, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing, let alone to be a good director. It's not an easy thing, let alone to have good technical skills and make something look consistently good. I mean, I know I will rag on Wes Anderson for story, but still what he does is by no means easy. Doing something stop
gosh, no.
motion is not easy. And even with that, you have to have an incredible amount of positivity
Right.
and motivation if you want to continually do it. Maybe if you're in some really depressed state, you can somehow get it done, but then by the next one you're having a really hard time. And so you need to be totally, your body needs to be up on it. It's like putting in the best things before a workout, or if you just went and ate a bunch of Taco Bell and chugged a bunch of Baja Blast Mountain Dew and you go and work out, you're going to throw up everywhere and you're going to have a terrible workout. You need, and that's so, let me make the analogy a little bit more clear. The workout is making the film or the story, and you need to fuel in. We were talking about the journey, but I'm talking about positivity.
Okay.
Because focusing on the journey is, in a sense, part of this positivity and staying positive.
Right.
It's keeping this mindset sharp. We need to remember our mindset and be thinking about it and making sure it's sharp. Remember, hey, we need to be focused on the journey. We need to be focused on right now because this is what we're doing. And if we focus on a destination, we're going to get off track. We're going to,
No.
No?
No. You got to have the destination.
Well,
That's what keeps you on track.
But
you're
got
setting sail for a destination.
Okay, but you've got to appreciate. Yes.
Enjoy the journey. That's where I was going with this.
Okay.
And that's what I think. We had talked about filmmakers, how once they finish a film, they're ready to go on to the next
Right.
thing. And that's where I was going with that.
Okay. Yes.
I think, and if you look at my notes, we were talking about the car. You got to fill it up. You got to pack it up.
All right. Do you want to read this?
No, you can. I don't have my glasses on.
Okay. So this is saying that preparing is important, but so is action. You can't wait for all the lights to be green before you head out. You can't wait for the weather to be sunny across the whole ocean before setting sail. Yes, pack the car and fill up the tank and check the map, but head out. Pick your crew. Load the ship with supplies and log your itinerary, but cast away.
Yeah, exactly. So that or those statements were just to talk about how we're starting this podcast, episode 1, and just going for it, and not waiting around and worrying about it and fretting about it and worrying about the cameras and worrying about this and that. And this is not the table that we ordered; it hasn't come in yet, so we're just going to use this one until the new one comes in, and maybe we'll use it. But whatever, we got going, and that's what those analogies are for. But you have to have a destination. I'm very adamant about setting goals, because if you go out onto the ocean without a destination, then the wind's just going to blow you all over the place. So you got to set your goal and you got to go for it. And that's what good filmmakers do. They set a goal, and they that roadmap is their script and their story, and they go for it. But my point was about journey was just that. Enjoy every day, enjoy the journey, enjoy while you're here. And most filmmakers do that. They love every bit of the process, and they go through it. And then when they finish, and you talk about this with Kubrick, that he was ready to go on to the next thing. Yes, go and attend the premiere and take the accolades if there are any to be had, and then go, thank you very much. Tomorrow morning I'm starting my next film, or I'm starting to read again to figure out my next film.
Right. There's only two good audio interviews with Kubrick. I think there's a reason for that. I think it's because he didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about the film that just came out.
Right.
He needed his time, every little bit of it, to find his next story. And I can also tell that it agitated him if he wasn't on that next voyage.
Right.
And that's such a common thing you see across all filmmakers in interviews.
It's a personality type, I guess.
The interviewer's always like, all right, well, you feel great now. I've heard that question so many times. Charlie Rose has probably said it so many times too. And because he's interviewed so many great filmmakers. And it's all on YouTube. And I spent a lot of time on YouTube before I started realizing my time is better spent on reading. But at least I did spend about the last time that I spent a lot of time on YouTube, I was watching these director interviews. And that's the thing. They're always like, no, we're focusing on the next one. We're writing the script for the next one. We're doing pre-production for the next one. Whatever it is, they're already into it.
Well, it's tough. I'll just say this from the one film that I did make, or any project, and this, editing, you spend so much time on it. Every little detail. And by the time you get finished making the film and the editing and everything, you've seen it so many times. And then you have to go and, if you're a big Hollywood success, then you're going on these interviews and talk shows and everything, and then you're talking about the same film. You're ready to get on to the next project. But, you have to do it. So that's why if you ever watch any of those interviews and you see the directors and they just don't look too enthusiastic.
No, I think there's a thing. I've noticed that in all of them.
They're like, man, I am done. I have seen that.
Because if they were going to, probably the ideal state to hit them with that interview is like right as they've just discovered the story for it.
Yeah.
is probably when they would be the most excited about it, because that's when they have to rally everyone up to make the dang thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's almost like if you're going to get the interview, get it out on like the first day of filming. But I do think now that we've noticed that, hopefully I could at least work on that. So if we ever find ourselves in an interview state, because the people still haven't seen the film, so it's if you can get past the post-film blues,
Yeah.
then I would like to personally. That's first. I want to tell a good story. Second, if I get on an interview, I want to wow them with my smile.
Give a good interview.
Everything in between there can be okay.
Well, I've always enjoyed talking about my project because I learned so much from it, and I think it's kind of one of my philosophies of life. If you're in a situation, figure out how to learn something from it. I preached that to you when you were in school. You're like, you didn't want to go to math class, or you didn't want to go to this, and it's like, well, learn something about it.
I think I did learn something that system was not the right system for education.
Whatever it is, I can't tell you what to learn, but learn something because you're spending your time there, so you might as well. So I enjoy sharing those lessons that I learned from making my feature film, and I'll share them. Anytime you want to hear about it, and I'll do it with enthusiasm. It's never going to be old for me, so I don't think I'll have a problem with the interview.
Well, I do want to actually. I was just thinking of a funny experience, but I want to ask you about that. But I want to say one more thing about the voyage, and we can come back to the voyage and more. But I just like the idea of comparing it to somebody who is going on this ship, 1800s set sail voyage to go discover a new land, a new country or something, or a new continent. I feel like that's what it is we were comparing it to. That it's like, so if you've already, and you're not the colonists, you're not the person colonizing these places, you're not the person who's supposed to set up shop there, you're just the person you have your map and your compass and everything, and you are in charge of finding a new piece of land that has supposedly never been found before.
And sending word back.
Yes.
Here it is. It's beautiful. Come on down.
Right. And then from there, your instinct is to then, I don't think that this is really, there's only so many continents or whatever, but it's like a person who then, all right, I'm ready to go discover the next piece of land.
Yeah.
And a completely new one. Oh, I've already seen America. All right. I want to go see whatever.
Yeah. That's what drives me. I love it. I love like I said, the process of seed of an idea, building into this final product that goes up on the screen.
Dodging icebergs.
Right. Because there's so many obstacles. Making a movie is story. There's a story there. You're the protagonist. You have to overcome obstacles, and and the climax is getting it on the screen. So every time you make a film, there's a mini story.
That's why behind the scenes videos can sometimes be more interesting than the actual films that they're made about.
Exactly.
I've watched behind the scenes videos for movies I did not like, and I enjoyed watching the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And that's also why there's so many movies about the movie making process. Well, maybe that's not the sole reason why, but it's it is a very easily understandable story. That's a great ending, a satisfying ending. Oh, your protagonist got their thing on the screen and everybody loved it.
Right.
And they were happy with it.
Yeah, hopefully. If you have a good story.
And let me ask you a question about your experience, about one of your many filmmaking experiences. I was thinking how you said you love building things as well.
Right.
And we were just talking about this the other day, that you built all the sets for your first film.
Yes.
And there's some great pictures of it too.
Not necessarily because I loved building, but because it was low
out
budget.
Of necessity, but you enjoyed it.
Oh,
you enjoyed
immensely.
the journey.
Oh gosh, yes. So it was a low budget film, and I was the director, and myself and the lead actor built all the sets because it was low budget.
Do you want to disclose the budget though?
Sure, I can.
Okay, tell them the budget.
So this is $1989,
No, the year is 1989.
That's what they say that though. That's a term.
Really?
In 1989 dollars.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. So like $1 million in 1920 would be like.
Oh, okay. I thought you were
Yeah.
making a joke saying, 1989, that's the... I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes. So factor in...
Money printed in 1989. No.
Factor in, you're making an independent film,
Yeah.
low-budget film
Low
in
budget film.
1989.
Yeah. So 300,000 was the budget.
Okay, because I've talked to people about your film, and I tell them low budget, and their mind is in what low budget is now, or they think it's something that... Because every time I've told them... I've also told them the time, but when I tell people... Maybe it's just younger people that I'm talking to, but when I tell them 300,000, I mean, I've told people that are into film, and they've been like, whoa, that's...
What do they think? That's a lot?
Yeah, that they think that was more.
Because nowadays 300,000 you could easily get some really inexpensive cameras. So we used Panavision cameras. The largest part of our budget went for camera rental, film stock, and film processing. So it was shot on 35 millimeter film, where today you're on digital, and it's just it's not that much money to get a great look, but it took us a lot of money just in the camera equipment, everything, the lights, tons of lights to get the the look that we needed. But yeah, I mean, so back then 300,000 was really low. You couldn't, $1 million was a low budget.
Yes.
Nowadays for Hollywood, and we were going for 35 millimeter feature length film. 20,000 is a low budget. 10,000, or excuse me, 20 million or 10 million is a low budget. So, yeah. So anyway, $300,000, and the lead actor and I built all the sets, and we would always say that was some of the most fun times were the nights that we spent in the abandoned Winn-Dixie, where we built our studio and our sets, having a great time listening to crazy music and dropping hammers on our toes and
Well, I wanted to actually ask you about the story of whether we dropped something more than a hammer onto something more than a toe.
Oh well, yeah. So the
maybe a little bit of a lesson to independent filmmakers of today.
The risk of having your lead actor helping you build the sets is when the director, who's not the best set builder of all, is on the ladder above the actor, holding a giant metal C-clamp and dropping it probably 4 feet down onto the bridge of his nose, and thinking, I have just broken my lead actor's nose weeks before we start filming. Luckily it didn't. He had a good strong nose.
Nowadays you don't need that from actors, because you could drop as many things as you want, and if you're working on like a Marvel movie, they can just CGI in the rest of your face.
Nose, yeah.
They could completely CG. You can stand off to the side and they'll just put in a full model, or in the case of Superman, supposedly they had CGI'd his mustache away, so I'm sure they could easily CGI out completely. If you lost your nose entirely, they could put it in, make it bigger if they wanted to.
It cost a little bit more than 300,000 probably.
Oh well, yeah, it'd be $300,000 for the
nose.
Yes, all the teams of nose builders.
That's right. So, there you go.
For independent filmmakers today, whatever your budget is, just any sort of filmmaker, I would not let your actor be downwind of a heavy equipment.
Yeah, downwind. It's true. Just be careful there. We have just chased a rabbit way off the path.
Really?
I don't know. I mean, it's great.
Isn't that podcasting?
It is. It's all about the journey. So, have we answered all of our questions that we laid before us? Why podcasting?
Why? We pretty much said why filmmaking.
Yeah.
And definitely talked about story.
Yeah, we definitely talked about story.
The only other question is regarding Atlanta. I mean, we kind of talked about that, right?
Yeah, I guess we did. You got here by doing your internship. I know people in the business. I've lived in LA before. Wasn't excited about going back there. Atlanta has just as much production, if not more, than L.A. and New York.
Not as what I've heard is not as much writing though. It seems that more of the writers are either in New York or L.A.
So let's change that.
Exactly. No, that makes me excited.
Yeah.
That makes me very excited.
Less competition.
No, I would rather there's more people telling good stories than less.
I agree. I mean, I'm all for, but that's why we're sharing this, because we want more good stories. We're not trying to compete and cancel out the competition.
Yeah, if you get a good story, then and I can help you make it, then we do that. Or if I get it, or if we both get a good story between the two of us, then that's great. Just whatever we can do to get the best stories.
Yeah, I've always been that way.
Yes.
I don't want to hide secrets. I guess we talked about that I was in music for a while, and that was always something that other bands were always really jealous of other bands in the town, and they didn't want to help them out. And I just disagreed with that. I was like, no, if we all help each other out, it's gonna make the scene better. And I remember, and this is something I talk about a lot, is Sub Pop was a label in Seattle, and in the 90s, that the whole grunge genre came out of that little scene. And what was going on was, music labels were in LA, and to get a deal, you had to go to LA, and put your band in a showcase and try to get a record deal from a label. And they had tried this several times. They would take some of the bands down, they would go and try to get, a showcase. But when they would get there, their music was so different, and the audience really didn't understand it. So, I think it was the time where, hair bands and hard, heavy metal rock and roll was popular, and grunge was totally different. And, so the audience just didn't understand it, so they didn't come across well. So the people with the record labels were like, well, the audience is not digging this. But the guys in the bands from Seattle knew that they had a great local audience. So they said, let's bring the labels up here and let them see us play in our club on our turf. And so they all rallied around it, all the bands that, and they all hit at the same time, thanks to this one guy that started the Sub Pop label. And I've just always thought about that. It's like, I want more good stories. So if I learn something about story and I can share it and it helps somebody else create a great story, then awesome. I'm tired of watching not good stories.
That's also why I like having this pro story podcast, because the whole idea is we'll be the first to like, if I have a realization tomorrow, then it's going on exactly on the next podcast, or we're cutting it into this podcast right at the beginning. Here's the announcement. I figured out the story.
What? Yeah, guess what?
And if I find an easy way, and also this is an easier way to talk about it than writing it into a book. It's a quicker way to get it out there. And then if I do say, hey, I did figure out the secret of the story, but the part of the secret is I can't explain it thoroughly enough in a podcast, so I'm writing a book right now, and I will tell you the soonest I finish it. But anyway, so that's a good way to have the podcast too.
Yeah. And I think this is a great way to end this podcast.
Yeah.
Is that we're here to share what we learn and give that information to help educate other people and make it just a better landscape for stories out there.
Well, let's make this Hot Atlanta into Story Atlanta.
Yeah, you're going to need to work on that one.
That's what it's all about. That's what we're here to work. That's what it is.
If I can be honest, you trust me. Yeah, work on that.
We're getting in the growth mindset.
Story Atlanta.
I want to do something wrong so I can't grow from it.
It's true. It's the only way you can grow is to.
So shall we end it off with some motivating words?
Let's do it.
From the best man himself.
That's right.
Les Brown.
Because you got to have a passion, you got to have a dream,
and fortunately enough, we have our dream.
Very fortunate. I'm so thankful to have this dream. I'm so thankful to have a passion.
And so the next step from there is using it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you've been given the insanely lucky gift of having the dream, you have to execute it. That's the only way to really show thanks for the fact that you've been given it, that you found it.
Yeah.
Is you have to.
And just the title, Live Your Dreams, not reach your dream, live your dreams.
That means your entire life. That means everything about your life. So this next thing will explain more of that will explain
Yeah.
living it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, if you want that thing
Bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up your time, your peace, and your sleep for it, if all that you dream and scheme is about it, and life seems useless and worthless without it, if you'll gladly sweat for it, and fret for it, and plan for it, and lose all your terror of the opposition for it, if you simply go after that thing you want with all of your capacity, strength, and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, and stern pertinacity, if neither cold, poverty,
yeah,
famine, nor gout, sickness nor pain of body and brain can keep you away
yeah,
from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you beseech it and set it,
with the help of God, you'll get it. Go for it. Almost.
You will get it.
That's right.
You.
Love that. I almost had it completely memorized.
Growth. We can do it next one if we want, and we can do it the next one until it's absolutely seamless.
That's
right. I'm so happy.
I'm happy too. I hope you're happy.
We hope you're happy.
Have the
You'll get
happiest day. Yeah. I'm Hughens.
And I'm fortunate enough to be Son.